Okay, what I'd like to do today is to actually go through this video and show you exactly what it is that it took to put together this motherboard tray. Now there's three pieces. The vertical piece that you see in the back there that the red part is attached to, that actually took the longest because I had to do front and back side of these. And I had to make the carbon fiber match on both sides, etc., etc. So it was a little bit more time consuming. The red piece itself, I really didn't get a whole lot of video on. The camera did not actually record while I thought it was. And then, of course, the bottom piece for the motherboard, where the motherboard rests down there, that was fairly straightforward. That was pretty easy to do. The challenging parts, of course, are those two vertical pieces back there that actually took the longest to do. So I'll go through here and try to hit some of the high points. Now, as you can see here, I actually didn't get the beginning of this video recorded for this first application. I did get it applied to this point, got the excess cut out of there, but now this is where I'm going to start actually forming that stuff around the corners, around the edges, and I'm going to try to get this all smooth around where that 120 millimeter fan goes, where the I/O plates go, etc. There's a lot of working this back and forth, and this video is going to be sped up rather quickly. Even though it did turn out to be a complete hour video, this really has condensed several hours down into one, but you're going to see how much it actually takes here in just a minute as the video cranks up of really what it took. As you can see here, I keep taking my little scissors and doing little snips to give myself relief places so the fiber isn't like bunching up and trying to crease on me. It's giving it a little bit more of an expansion area as I'm trying to heat it up, move it around, press it around, and work with it. It takes a lot of effort to keep it just in that right warm state where it's not too warm, but it's not too cool. There's a lot of heating, a lot of working it, a lot of heating it, a lot of working it, a lot of heating it, a lot of working it. As you can see, just the effort it's taking just to start rolling this stuff around in that 120 millimeter to make sure that I'm not getting my creases or anything else. And a lot of people talk about how, they get a lot of bubbles, a lot of creases, and a lot of problems. And it really takes a lot of time to work those things out, laying it down properly to begin with, etc. And so here we go. We're going to go ahead and crank up the video and speed it through the processes. I really wish I could work this fast. It would make things much easier. So kick back and enjoy. There's going to be some places where I'm going to slow down and discuss things, but it really is an hour-long video. I doubt anybody wants to sit around and actually watch this for a full hour. So as you skip around, I'll try to note where the points are that I actually discuss things in this video. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to trim this where there's about a quarter to an 18th, an eighth, maybe a 16th of an inch excess around the outside, because that's going to fold through the lip and fold around to the other side here. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm just going to want to trim it ever so slightly right around the outside, so I've actually still got enough left that I can roll it through that hole. I learned very quickly while doing this one, you'll notice that when I go to the opposite side of this, I actually lay down some of that 3M backing that I had pulled this carbon fiber off of. So it wouldn't stick to this, because as you can see here, I'm fighting this thing trying to stick to my little cutting pad. Okay, now it looks like I've pretty much got everything folded over, and I've gotten all of my edges done. So now it comes to the trim time on the back. Now, had I thought a little bit more about what I was doing, I would have started on this side first and folded it over to the other side. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to cut this as thin as I can, but I also want to keep some kind of crease and some kind of overlap there for it to be able to hold. Well, the thing is, when I apply the fiber on this side, it's going to create almost a raised edge around the areas that the other side's carbon fiber got wrapped over to this side. So had I done it the opposite direction, when I installed this tray up against the case would have hidden that overlap or that crease little area. As it stands, it's now going to be on the outside of the back of the case. Still didn't turn out too bad. It's just that you can see that little bit of a raised area where that underlying carbon fiber was rolled over. But as you can see here, I'm just trying to trim everything up and make it as even and as clean as possible, because as I said, when it folds over, it's going to create a crease. It's not going to be extremely noticeable, but you're going to see it in the certain right lighting conditions. You're going to see that raise. So I want to trim it up as much and as neat as possible. I also picked up these great little hole punches. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and hammer on this metal, but I am going to use the sharpness of those little hole punches, which is great because I can sit there and kind of spin it around within those holes and pull out that carbon fiber. It makes it much easier than trying to use the razor blades to clean out each one of the holes like I was doing on the other things. So I was kind of happy to finally pick up some tools that help me out a little bit more like these. As you can see, I'm going to take this, I'm just going to run through all of my holes and sit there and spin it back and forth until I get to the point where I can pop these things out with the razor blade. And I'm just checking it to see how it's working. This is actually the first hole I've ever done with that little tool, so I was like, wow, that worked out pretty well. So I think I'm going to do it on the rest of them. And off I go. So I'm marking the holes, I find my little indentation, and I just start cutting them out. They seem to be popping out pretty easy. So I go to town. There's a lot of little holes on this thing that I got to sit there and clean out. And I actually found that I missed a few of them. At the very end, I actually had to clean them out in order to be able to connect the board. So, but one of the things that I'm showing here is the fact that I was not able to get the carbon fiber up and around that lip that stuck out. So what I did was I created another little piece of carbon fiber, and I'm actually going to match the grain. And there's a lot of details that are missed in these videos and pictures that you really can't see But what I did here, and that you didn't get a chance to see, was I actually mismatched the grain, and it's more of a chevron type connection point where that lip that sticks up meets with the flat part. I did more of a chevron type connection, but it does continue the grain pattern correctly. So when you actually look at it, it doesn't look like it was spliced. I mean, it just looks like the grain pattern continues on. What I'm doing here is I'm just kind of finishing out that little piece. I'm trying to fold that front edge over, get it over the top, get it around the corners, get it around the edges, and then I'm going to take that back piece and bring it around and help finish off that lip. But I needed to get the front pieces rolled over the top of that lip and around the side of that lip in order to have that other piece, if you see up there by my thumb, that's still sticking out there. So I'm trimming off the excess, and I'm getting it to the point now where I can take this and finish it off. I'm going to heat it up, and as you can see now I'm wrapping it around. Now I'm finishing off that back side now, where I'll then go ahead and trim that down. Now this is complete. What I'm trying to show here is to show how that thing got completed around there and how clean it looks. It's not really easy to see with the lighting, I guess, and it being black, but you can see it. It does hit right there and come back at the angle like it should. Actually, we're trying to do holes first. We got to do holes. Got to finish off those holes, because see what will happen is if I don't get the holes on this side and then I wrap the back side, I have the potential of missing holes and then having to hunt and find where those holes actually are. Makes it much more difficult. But if I cut them out on each side as I'm doing the sides, then I know where they're at on the other side. See, what I was showing there was I was actually using a pin to pop through on the other side where I could find the holes, so I could see and make like little, shall we call them, nipples on this side. So they were just little raised pieces, so I knew exactly where the holes were. And now I'm taking my pin, going around and saying, okay, making my indentions. If you watched any of my other videos where I took the pin and stuck it in the holes to make the indentions, that's what I was doing. Now that I've got the indentions, I then turn around and I use the hole tool to cut out the holes. And then after I'm done with the hole tool, I use the razor to pop out those little excess pieces that are sitting there now that they're cut out. Takes a lot of time and patience to really clean these things up and get them exactly where you want them to be. But as you can see, the results are great. Okay, now it's time to do the other side. Of course, here we want to go ahead and clean up every bit of it that we can. There's a lot of things that we need to make sure that are not sticking on the back side or whatever. Also, I learned that by putting down a piece of the 3M backing that I pulled off the carbon fiber from, when I lay this down on this side, I can keep it from actually sticking to the plastic below, which I found on the first run was kind of a pain in the butt because it literally basically glued this thing down to the pad. So what I'm trying to do here is really lay it down and make sure that it's meeting the same grain pattern. And really, I don't know where these things came from, but I got a couple pieces of plastic that came with some Dremel kits that I've got, and the plastic actually seems to work out pretty well. I'm just showing that it's a little piece of Dremel uh, plastic, and I don't even know what kit it came from, but it works out pretty well. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm actually using the sticky of the tape to help me hold this metal um, ruler straight and exactly where I want it to be. So I set it down and I actually use the sticky to hold it, and then I cut off the excess and then pull it off of the ruler. But it's really kind of a neat way to make sure that you get a straight cut exactly how you want without the ruler or anything else moving even a hair on you. And then I'm going around the corners and I'm trimming the corners in the shape because really you can't have much excess to roll over on this side. The other side was easier because you could actually roll it over and know that you're putting on another piece of vinyl that's going to hold it secure into place. Whereas now this is the top layer vinyl, so now I've got to be very, very, very accurate as far as how far out that I cut because there's not really a whole lot of room to roll over. Plus, when I roll it over, it's going to have to match the exact same pattern so you can see that it's not, so it's very seamless, if you will, around it. So I'm cutting it pretty much as close as I can. I mean, you're talking probably a 32nd, a 16th of an inch out, just enough to kind of roll into that lip area. So I'm just trimming it out, and by hand is really the only way that you could really do this. I mean, I thought about it for a second on how I could do it with a ruler, and there was just no way to get it this accurate through that area. So I just had to take my time, and I mean, this is really sped up video, and you can see, I mean, I'm just really trying to do what I can to make sure that it's right. See, now the ruler is going to help me clean it up, but there was no way to get in there and actually do this the way I wanted to without it. I mean, with it to begin with. All right, now this is the one little piece of video that I actually have of me cutting the pieces out and getting them ready to do that I/O plate in the red. And this is about the only video I have, so I'm just going to run this one through as quickly as I can. Obviously, I'm cleaning, cleaning, cleaning. If you've watched my other videos, one of the big things that I talk about a lot is always making sure you get those finger oils off of it, and that you always make sure that the surface that you're laying this 3M down on is clean. Should always be clean. Now, what I'm doing here is I was actually short on some carbon fiber, and I'm cheating a little bit, and that is I'm getting this baby as warm as possible because I'm literally going to stretch it. This is going to take me a few times working it, but what I'm trying to do is I'm literally trying to stretch this carbon fiber and make it a bigger piece than it really was. And you're never going to do it the first time, every time. Okay, you might get lucky. But for me, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times to apply it to make sure that I'm getting it where I need it to be. See, right here I've just taken it completely off. I'm starting all over again. This is the one reason why I love this DiNoc fiber. This stuff you can pull off, put on, pull off, put on, do what you got to do to it until you're ready to say it's done. I just love it. If I had done this too many more times, I've got the applicator. There's some stuff that you can buy for this 3M that will basically put the sticky back in it if it ever loses its sticky. You see right here, I'm stretching. I'm actually getting this stuff as hot as possible and pulling on this. And I'm really getting a pretty good stretch. You can see right there, it got really pliable on me real fast and then bubbled up. But I am literally stretching this stuff to expand past what its actual size was to begin with. Using that little tool to fold it down and in. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the easy cuts first. I'm doing the straight, and then when I get to this point, now I can flip it over and do these other little cuts. Sorry, this is off screen. But this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get in there to that curve, that bend, and actually trim it accurately through there. Now there's something that you're going to notice if you ever work with the red 3M DiNoc, and somebody warned me about this before I even started, and that is the difference between the red 3M DiNoc and the black 3M DiNoc is that when you cut the red, there is going to be a white, you can see a white edge on the red. And the way you solve this is, if you notice on my desk is a red Sharpie sitting there. And you just run that Sharpie or a red pen of some kind that's hopefully the same tint, and you just run it along the edge, and that fades that white out and doesn't make it stand out as much. Just a little tip on using some red DiNoc. You don't ever have to do that with the black. It seems that when you cut the black, it's just a black edge. Always stick with as sharp razors as you can. If it's not sharp enough, change it. So that was about all I had on the red. Now we're going to do the motherboard tray, the tray itself. And of course, we've gone through enough of this discussion. I'm just going to run the rest of these videos as fast as I can so we can actually kind of see the process go through. Again, I learned stick that stuff on underneath it so you don't stick to the desk or to the unit below. So if you stick that backing that you had used, that you'd pulled the DiNoc off of, and stick it under there, then this DiNoc's not going to stick back to it underneath in that open area. As you can see, I didn't pull it completely off because this is a rather large sheet, and I don't want to get into the whole creases and bubbles and everything else. So what I did was I started at one corner and I worked my way back and kept it smooth as I kept pulling it back. Now I'm going to need to cut out this center area and make it so and start working it. I'm cutting out the corners here so I can fold the corners over and stretch them without problem. I think I decided to do that instead of deal with the that centerpiece just yet. So as you can see, I'm heating up and dealing with the edges and the corners and trying to get these things folded over. Nobody's ever going to see the underneath of the motherboard tray, so I can just roll it over the edges and roll it over that lip, and we should be good to go. There's no need to do the underneath of this motherboard tray. Now what I found is you can actually cut your corners out at an angle, and then you take one of them and you fold it in, and then you cut it off straight, and then you take the other one and you fold it in, you cut off its excess until you meet the corners. And where the corners meet, you can get it somewhat to blend with each other with a little bit of heat and a little bit of work. I don't know exactly how to explain it. All I can say is that if you do it and you work with it enough, you'll catch it. You'll figure it out. Because when you cut that thing out at an angle and you fold the one in behind the other one and then trim it off and then bring that other thing around and then trim that off, you're going to see where they can meet, and you can make almost a seamless corner. But the problem is with this motherboard tray, it doesn't have pure rounded corners. It's got actual cuts or slits. So from where the metal had been folded and they meet. So with this one, I didn't have to actually join these corners 100%. I could actually leave them with that little gap, and so that's why I cut those things out at an angle. Really working those corners. As you can tell, you just can't roll those edges over. I mean, you've really got to work it all the way down the line and work it in steps and in a process in order to get your edges to truly form and curve over and form with this DiNoc. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of steps to get this thing from the point of starting to finish. It takes a lot of heating, a lot of forming, a lot of heating, and a lot of forming. And it never fails. There's always one corner that just constantly bugs me that I've got to keep playing with. As you can see, I'm cutting in from the corners. I'm cutting in at an angle. I'm not cutting this thing straight. I'm cutting them in at an angle so there's room to actually bend and pull and be able to fold this stuff up and under. And I'm going to heat up the fiber. As you can see now, I'm going to really start warming it and working it, trying to get it around that curve. It's got kind of a little complex curve. It's not really that complex, but it was enough that I had to work the fiber a little bit to get it around that curve. As you can see here, I'm still trying to set it up so it will form around there, cutting a little bit of relief here and there. Probably going to warm it up. Here we go. Let's get it warm. As I keep saying, it takes a lot of warming, a lot of trimming, a lot of forming, warming, trimming, forming. See, I've got two lips here that you're not really able to see. The part that I'm doing there is very straightforward, whereas this piece that I'm doing is actually raised, so I'm having to come up and over and around. Actually, that one is straight as well. That one right there is got the lip. See right there, I'm actually cutting on the inside of that lip. I'm trying to form it down. That's a flat side. That one was easy to bring through. I just folded it over. Trimming off the excess, trying to make it look pretty. Again, nobody's going to see this side, but it's just me. I want to make sure that everything's all trimmed up nice and neat. And there we have it. We now have pretty much this thing almost done. Now I'm going to have to put the thing together. Before I do that though, this is what I'm doing, and I'm trying to make those little punches so I know exactly where each one of these little holes are. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a ballpoint pen and I'm holding in the little clicker so it sticks out just a little bit longer, and I'm putting my finger on the other side of the hole and I'm pressing into my finger, so that way it creates these little like nipples on the other side of that. Now I know exactly where to take my tool. Once I grab my pen, I can use my pen to create my little divots or my little dents in there, so I know exactly where each one of my screw holes are. And that's all I'm doing is now I don't have the actual pen out. I'm just using the cone tip of the pen and running around each one of those little nipples that I made and shoving that pin in there, so now I've got a better idea of where all of my screw holes are. Then I'm going to reach over and I'm going to grab my hole punch, and I'm going to go and do the exact same thing, except now I'm going to cut out the little holes so I know exactly where they are. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm going through, and then I'll follow back again with the razor blade to pop out the holes. when in doubt, change out the razor.